Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the first ever fully hybrid Entrepreneurons produced by WARF and D2P. I'm Laura Heisler, I'm Director of Programming for WARF, and we are delighted to partner with D2P and UW Innovate Week to bring you today's session. I do have a few housekeeping notes for how today's session will go and a few things I want to mention about some upcoming activities that you might like to know about. But I'm going to start, as many events at UW-Madison do, by acknowledging the land that we are on here, those of us in the room. University of Wisconsin-Madison occupies ancestral Ho-Chunk land, a place their nation has called Tejo, since time immemorial. In an 1832 treaty, the Ho-Chunk were forced to cede this territory. Decades of ethnic cleansing followed when both the federal and state governments repeatedly, but unsuccessfully, sought to forcibly remove the Ho-Chunk from Wisconsin. This history of colonization informs our shared future of collaboration and innovation. Today, UW-Madison respects the inherent sovereignty of the Ho-Chunk Nation, along with the 11 other First Nations of Wisconsin. Before I talk to you a little bit more about how today's going to go, I do want to mention a few upcoming events that you might like to get on your calendars. Later this month, we will be featuring our WARF Essential Topics series focused on conflict of interest and conflict of commitment. Really important information for people doing research on campus and outside activities outside of campus. So you might want to join that. Like this one, that will be a hybrid event, so you can join from the comfort of your private space, or you can join us here in the forum, the DeLuca Forum. And then next month, we will be having our second and only other Entrepreneurons of the fall semester, part of UW Startup Week and Global Entrepreneurship Week, on building a winning startup team. And we're really excited about this session. Again, this will be a hybrid event, so you can come here and join us, or you can join remotely. And now a few words about today's event. Today's event, for those of you here in the room, you'll be able to join a resource fair that is part of UW Innovate Week in this space in the Town Center atrium immediately following this session at 5 o'clock. And if you're remote, but you could get to campus in time, please jet on down and join at 5 o'clock. There are dozens of folks exhibiting, talking about their programs, et cetera. I'm going to put in a plug for my employer, Wharf, who is working right now on something called Varsity Venture Studios. There's an open call for proposals. And if it's something that interests you, all about software and innovative ideas that you have where software could be a solution, you might want to come on down and talk to Katie Rice, who will be staffing the Wharf table and is running the Varsity Venture Studio program. So do come and check that out, because that open call ends. Katie, when does that end? Monday. Okay, so you have till Monday to get your ideas into a priority deadline. So come on down and talk to Katie if you're interested in that. For the rest of the information that I want you to know about today, we're going to be doing an unusual panel that the one and only John Surdick have orchestrated to perfection. We're going to be able to hear from a lot of different voices on campus looking at innovation in areas that we don't always think about when we talk about entrepreneurship and innovation, and hopefully open your eyes to some of those. He's going to be running a cascading panel, bringing up different collections of speakers to talk a little bit, and then they'll go back into the audience. We're going to wait till the very end for your audience questions, but we will save 15 minutes at the end for Q&A. Those of you in the room, we have a very COVID-safe protocol for getting your questions. We're going to ask you to line up at the microphone that you see in the very back of the room, so you don't have to touch anything and we don't have to pass it around. Okay, so if you're in the room and you want to ask a question, go to the back of the room and take your turn standing for the mic. If you are not in the room and you want to ask a question, use the Q&A function in Zoom. I will be sitting at a table up front. I will read those, and John will toggle between in-person questions and questions over Zoom. So hopefully that all makes sense. If you have a question for me about this, feel free to use Q&A and I'll see that and I can try to respond to you as well. So this is our first time doing this. Hopefully it goes well. And with that, I am delighted to bring up John Surdick from the UW-Madison School of Business to run today's session. So John, over to you.
I guess maybe we should pause. You probably heard a lot of important words there. Inaugural, first ever, a lot of improvisation may be required. So I am thrilled to be here, and thank you, Laura, for setting the stage for this panel conversation today. I'm John Surdick, and I'll be your facilitator for the STEM to STEAM conversation. And it promises to be a lively and admittedly ambitious program, because you laugh now, but we have not tried anything of this kind of complicated choreography before. So I'm very excited to do this, though, because, frankly, having this constellation of people together today is particularly poignant during UW-Madison's celebration of Innovate Week. Innovate Week is really about thinking about the power of the people who toil throughout the campus to solve all kinds of dizzying problems and engaged in all kinds of important scholarship. And while we often think about UW-Madison's tremendously rich history of scientific enterprise, we sometimes overlook its commitment to artistic expression and social inquiry. And if we think back, to UW-Madison's founding, it wasn't long after that we brought to the world the first dance program, I think in 1924, and John Witty's work that helped to shape public policy and bring to life the Social Security program in 1934. So, this rich tradition is alive and well here at UW-Madison, and all of it is animated by the ethos of the Wisconsin idea, as we each strive to reduce what it is that we work on, what it is that we care about, what it is that we do into practice for the benefit of others. And today, I think our panel will help us to kind of reconsider and broaden our very notions of what entrepreneurs and entrepreneurial action really mean. I think they'll also help us to consider how artists in particular might take their creativity and their craft further. And I think we'll see how UW-Madison invites students with very diverse perspectives and backgrounds to really, participate in kind of daring social experiments and to, even reshape education as we know it in this country. And lastly, we'll learn also about some entrepreneurial initiatives and opportunities for students to make the most of their time here, programs and resources that will help them to develop their capabilities, to develop their confidence, and ultimately to develop professional relationships or contacts that can help them to develop their ideas more fully or bring them to market. So with that, and given our kind of the discipline of the clock today, I'd like to invite our first couple of panelists up, if I might. I guess that Mary Beth Collins, the Executive Director of the Center for Community and Nonprofit Studies at SOHI, as well as Jeff Snell, the Vice Provost of Lifelong Learning at UW-Madison's Division of Continuing Studies, and both of them tireless advocates for social entrepreneurship here at UW-Madison, take the stage. And maybe beginning with Mary Beth, we could start with you. Could you tell us a little more about your role on campus and sort of, what it is that interests you about social entrepreneurship, with your work?
Sure. Thank you so much for having me today. I really appreciate our center and our work being included in this discussion. And I'm really excited to hear from the other experts on campus that are going to be here with us. So I am the director of the Center for Community and Nonprofit Studies at the University of Wisconsin. We're based at the School of Human Ecology, and our center focuses on community, nonprofit efforts, and civil society. So that might sound not that aligned per se with entrepreneurship or social enterprise or some of the terms that you might associate more with business or design or other such fields. However, we do touch a lot in our work on innovation and entrepreneurship. And in some ways, we challenge some of the notions about the role of innovation and entrepreneurship in the world. We do see in the philanthropic sector and in the community sector that notions of innovation have always been there, and that actually people are more and more interested all the time in pressing folks in the nonprofit and community sectors to be showing that they're entrepreneurial. I often challenge the term entrepreneurial because when you look up the definition, it suggests that an individual takes the risk of their enterprise. And I think both in the business world and in the nonprofit world, that's not necessarily the case with when we use that term. But when I think about innovation, in a lot of our programs, we really try to highlight the way that, since the beginning of time, humans have been innovative about taking care of their communities, and that actually, the problems that we face that we often think that we need entrepreneurship and innovation for are really systemic problems that are there for a reason. So we try to make sure our students are prepared for going out into these sectors, thinking critically and being given practical skills to do the work in the sector that they choose. And that can be both in the traditional nonprofit sector or in hybrid or gray areas, including mission-based business. We do have students that are pursuing those sorts of things. So I'll pause there. Those are some big picture ideas, but that's kind of where our center plays into this discussion, I think, and we can follow up more.
No, that's great. And actually, before we move on to Jeff, I wonder if you could just speak for a moment to how the pandemic has perhaps set the stage for the work that you're doing, given this concern for community that kind of animates so much of what people are interested in and pursuing there. Has it changed much for you the last couple of years?
Yeah, so what I would say about that is it really relates to the things that I was just describing. So particularly with COVID-19, we saw the way that the patchwork of systemic supports that exist out there or don't exist out there really had holes the minute that we had a crisis like the pandemic. And we also saw that the third sector, mutual aid groups, nonprofit organizations, individuals and communities doing innovative stuff, were the ones that actually swept in as the first responders and filled a lot of those gaps. And we also saw the way that little haltings within our nonprofit organizations, like the inability to throw a fundraiser because of social distancing requirements and a pandemic, put a lot of those organizations up against the wall and really, I think, shone an important spotlight on how much important work they're doing in our communities. So I think that the pandemic has underscored a lot of the points that we like to try to make about thinking critically about the role of the sector. And I will just add to that I've been presenting a lot on the quadruple pandemic that we're really in, which is, increased awareness, not a new issue, but of racial violence and injustice and inequities, the COVID-19 pandemic, the decline of democratic institutions in the world, and actually overt efforts to dismantle them, and climate change and environmental degradation. And if you think about those four things, community organizations and civil society are what's going to basically bring us around on that stuff. Hopefully influencing good government and good business, but the pressure is probably going to come from those sectors.
Yeah, that's great. And Jeff, I imagine you see students kind of responding to some of the pressures that Mary Beth kind of articulated there. Could you tell us a little bit about your role and the work that you do with the social entrepreneurship class and your students?
Thank you, John. I'd rather just go to questions, but
We'll do that later, I
all right,
promise.
very good. And thank you for your work, and thank you, Laura, for all your efforts getting this together. And good afternoon. I work in the Division of Continuing Studies, Jeff Snell. My email, if anybody wants to follow up, is jeff.snell@wisc.edu. That's the division charged with building the undergraduate online programs. I also work in social innovation and social entrepreneurship. That's my particular passion in Sandbox. I ride Mary Beth's coattails for the pleasure of teaching a couple of semesters in human ecology, social entrepreneurship specifically with juniors and seniors, which is just wonderful. Blessing of working with Andy and the Discovery to Product team as a mentor, work with National Science Foundation as an entrepreneurial mentor, and then do a lot of work on the side with folks that want to change the world with a sustainable model. So that's me. The student pathways, maybe the best way to go about it are the stories about what do you mean by social innovation, social entrepreneurship. So if we're operating on a conventional definition around one who undertakes, and you want to increase things from lower utility or move them from lower utility to higher utility, or in more traditional sense, using the Jean-Baptiste definition for the scholars in the room, and to put a smile on the face of the econ majors, how you allocate resources to get greater productivity from things that can go from lower productivity to higher productivity. But the flip on that is the social entrepreneur is more interested in having those benefits accrue to society. So maybe a conventional entrepreneur, first bottom line matters. How are you going to get out of the basement, get off the couch, make a living, send your kids to great institutions like Madison? That matters. A social entrepreneur might start by saying, what's the problem? How can I come about an innovative or novel solution so that the benefits of the model don't accrue to me solely in profitability, although that's important. Got to get out of the basement. But what are the benefits that accrue to society to go about the systemic change, to solve the problems? And they're often very, I love the way you frame it. It's why I'm such a fan of Mary Beth and her work at Sohi. They're systemic, they're hairy, they're sticky. And so the interdisciplinarity, the cross-sector problem solving becomes really fun and really a robust teaching tool. And the students and faculty that I've seen work through Andy's good work in Discovery to Product, they may come at it in the sense of Wisconsin idea, how we extend the benefits of this amazing flagship to every household in the state. Thank you, President Van Hise, 1905.
No, that's
So
great.
they come at it from a number of directions, but I think almost always it's, I want meaning in my work. I want 24/7 to know I'm not just about making a buck. Life is short. I want to know I'm making an impact. I want to change others' lives and benefit the world. And it's just so much fun to watch. The
Well,
example I wanted to give, by the way, is
yeah.
a guy who saw during the pandemic in California, the kids in the rural areas in particular, negatively affected, right? Because they don't have Wi-Fi. So even when schools were struggling to make the pivot, there were still students on the receiving end saying, I simply don't have the bandwidth. So this guy, this is written up in Stanford Social Innovation Review, I commend it to you, looks around and says, what are the assets sitting idle? There's school buses. And he says, why don't we put Wi-Fi routers on the buses
Nice.
and park them around the city? And it worked.
That's
So
pretty
that's
great.
an example of a guy that was a social innovator during the pandemic in the area of education. So
Well,
thanks,
on that
Jonathan.
theme and the little time we have here, maybe this idea of putting things into practice and this pathway beyond the classroom is really important. And I know you've been involved with the Force for Positive Change event that kind of recognizes and celebrates social entrepreneurship and social innovations in particular. Would you, what is that event, and when would a student, what would be their next step if they wanted to learn more and get involved?
Oh, it would make my day, Laura's day and week. Jeff.snell@wisc.edu. We'll get you all the information you need, but real quickly, actually, the couple that we're benefiting from their philanthropy toward this amazing institution, and we're sitting here as an example of their philanthropy. I'm talking about John and Tasha Morgridge. They're big fans of social entrepreneurship and social innovation. Sometimes the language doesn't resonate. Like in Wisconsin, we drink a lot of Missouri water. Show me. And in John and Tasha's world, and I would also argue in the East Coast, the ecosystem, if you will, around social innovation and social entrepreneurship can be more robust. So it's just how it is. It's how you do entrepreneurship. But here in the Midwest, sometimes we have a little catch up. So to their great wisdom, they call it Force for Positive Change. It's social entrepreneurship. It's building models, some of whom come out of the nonprofit sector because they need to figure out a more sustainable way to engage target populations in the problem solving to create the systemic change. And some come from conventional entrepreneurship where yes, they need first bottom line profitability, but again, they want that 24/7 life is short. I want impact. And so you have folks that may employ late adolescents on the autism spectrum who otherwise are not employable. But these folks say, yes, they are. And so they build business models. They're quite profitable. I can give you examples, actually winners of the awards for the Force for Positive Change. And the largest and most successful model of social entrepreneurship in the state, Riverview Gardens, that I helped launch about a decade, well, 15 years ago now. Great example about working with populations that most conventional business models write off, but they engage them to be part of their own solution, get them back into the workforce. Yes, for sustainability, but also dignity, their own self-sufficiency to become positive, productive members of society. Beautiful work, Riverview Gardens.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah. So again, students and others who are interested in the event can reach out for more information, but the idea is that you might develop something that has a social impact as well as maybe a viable financial model. And lastly, I guess, Mary Beth, maybe you could tell us a little bit about the kinds of students that you'd like to attract into your program, those that tend to thrive there, or perhaps provide an example of one who you feel embraces this and exhibits the entrepreneurial spirit.
Yeah, so thanks for that. So we have a community and nonprofit leadership undergraduate major, a certificate program that's post-baccalaureate in community and nonprofit leadership. And we have a human ecology master's program that goes through a lot of these same topics and themes. And I would say, I mean, everyone that comes into our programs, I think, has an entrepreneurial spirit, if we're going to use that term generally, because they usually come to us with a passionate area of subject matter interest, but they know that they have to learn the practical and the critical things about community and nonprofit and civil society work in context to be able to be functional and to have the right strategies towards that. And so people coming out of our program and going into our programs do have a lot of different professional and student profiles, but we've had everything from undergraduate students go to Google because corporate social responsibility people know that they need insightful learners and thinkers about this stuff, to starting their own nonprofits that have been successful, and to even being entrepreneurial in the service providing kind of way that we have graduate students that go off and do evaluations on impact for organizations that are a little bit more holistic than your typical like live and die by the metrics kind of stuff. So
that's great.
Yeah. So I hope that gives a taste.
No, that's fantastic. Thank you two very much for sharing so much in an abridged amount of time. That was impressive. So we'll invite you back up later for the Q&A, but I'd like to, I really appreciate the work you're doing. And I'd like to invite my close colleague and interim co-director of the Bowles Center for Arts Administration at the UW-Madison's Wisconsin School of Business to come up. And yeah, we work together.
Could you join me over here, John?
You
seem a little far away. Could you come on over? I think you could.
All right, I'm going to try and let's see. Is this
It's on.
Oh, excellent. You guys can hear me all right? My wife says I have a booming theater voice and she ought to know if she was a theater major, but no, this is great. So similar to our panelists a moment ago, maybe you could tell us a little more about your background and your kind of approach. Like, what is this interest in arts entrepreneurship? Where does this come from?
So in arts entrepreneurship, we often ask 3 questions. Who are you? What do you do? And why does it matter? And it's something that if you can define that for yourself or your organization, it becomes the bedrock of your approach to getting people interested and invested in your mission. So for me, I'm an educator. I'm an accordion player, which is pretty unique. And I'm a theater and event producer. And my interest at that intersection of business and the arts grew out of work when I was an undergraduate student in the School of Music here at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. And I'm so honored today to be one of the co-directors, along with John Surdick and Rebecca Buckman, of the graduate program, the Bowles Center for Arts Administration, where we train arts management professionals, arts leaders, and arts entrepreneurs for their career journey as a theater professional, arts professional, dance professional, you name it, anything in arts, entertainment, and culture.
Yeah. So, and what, I guess from your vantage point, what is it that kind of precipitated the creation of this degree program? I know we've been working together on it for years, and I came at it from one side and you from another, and I just been in your own
Sharks, West Side Story. Yep, we're there. So my background was as a music educator for many years. I was a band teacher. And I got into the theater community when I was doing my master's work in curriculum and instruction, doing research on extracurricular activities and school programs with middle school students, and also looking at arts in the community. So I had that background, and John's background was
Complicated.
so the arts and business coming together, I think. The new program in the Volt Center was generated out of looking at market needs and what people needed when they graduated from an undergraduate program, or if they were working as professionals but didn't have a business background. So what are those gaps between, I'm an amazing technician, I'm a fabulous theater artist, I'm a wonderful museum curator, but I want to figure out how to do more and be more and have a larger impact on my community. And that's really where we come in. We're taking business skills and bringing those together with artistic endeavors and passions and figuring out how to help people do more and be better.
Yeah, I would just add that one of the most potent things about this program in my mind is that it develops the entrepreneurial skills for the individual, but also their ability to be an entrepreneurial leader of an existing organization. And so this is a broad, based skill set that I think probably prepares them for that transition for later in their careers. But thinking about this sort of notion of putting things into practice and ways that they can kind of develop themselves as artists, entrepreneurs, maybe you could tell us a little bit about the arts business competition here at UW.
Okay, so get the words, art business competition. It is funding, it's money for people in the arts on campus. You can be any major, you could be in political science, you could be in biotechnology, you could be in theater, you could be in dance. All you need is an idea and the beginning of a business plan of what you want to do, how you're going to do it, and what your impact or potential impact might be. We have 3 finalists who all receive funding of up to $2,500 and then they have a year to bring that particular endeavor into practice. It's pretty phenomenal. It's again open to anybody on campus. Applications are taken in the spring with the final pitch presentation, usually the end of April. Awards are given then the following year to complete that activity. A couple of examples of artists who've been funded include Eva Gierczek, make sure I get all the names, Eva Gierczek, Kyle Johnson, and Satoka Hayami, who started the Loon Art Festival, which highlights female composers in the classical and contemporary music realm. Play It By Ear, which was Johnny Yan, who's a BS in mechanical engineering and a certificate in studio art, who did a project figuring out how to make musical instruments from ceramics. And we've also had other students who've gone on to found a whole host of other endeavors.
Yeah, do you have a favorite student or two that have come through either your arts entrepreneurship courses or that program in particular?
All of my students are my favorites, John, all of them.
This is a seasoned educator.
I would highlight maybe 2 artists who recently came through the program who've had some pretty phenomenal impacts and successes. The first I would say is Shasperi Leitard. She was a first wave scholar, graduated May 2020. You may have seen her as the speaker for the graduation ceremony at that point in time. And while she was a student in my class, she wrote the plan and put everything into motion, wrote all the grants, put together the schedule, and lined up artists for a full week, 5 different events. The first ever Black Arts Matter Festival here in Madison. She had over 450 folks who attended over the course of a week and did all of this as a student with a full-time course load. So super proud of her. Since then, they've gone on to have another event that was virtual last year, and they'll be bringing it back again in March of next year, hopefully in person. And then the second artist I would highlight is Grammy Award-winning Sarah Braley, who just finished her DMA in music. And she took the class in order to learn more about how to translate her incredible vocal talents as a classical soprano into a career of teaching, educating, running a studio, podcasting, and touring. So super proud of Sarah Braley. She won a Grammy Award this past year as well.
Okay, so clearly anything is possible at UW-Madison. This is fantastic. Those are great examples. And, some of you may notice there's kind of a recurring theme here as we transition to our next panelists, but this notion that the student can pursue their interest in the classroom, but also take it further with some of these other kind of applied learning opportunities or programs on campus, which is, I think, a really good hallmark for Wisconsin's approach to this kind of training.
Thanks. I'll just leave folks with 2 websites. If you're interested in learning more about the arts on campus, the Arts Hub is called the Division of the Arts. It's a little bit of a strange name. And their website is go.wisc.edu/Arts Hub. And if you're interested in the Bolt Center, ours is a little bit easier. It's bolzcenter.org. So with that, thanks so much. And thank you, John.
Yeah, and thank you for letting me escape my podium with that invitation. That was fantastic. Thank you, Sarah. Our next guest that I'd like to invite up are Shabaka Gibson, the director of our new Creative Destruction Lab, as well as Gerlando Jackson, one of our Vilas Distinguished Professors of Higher Education and the director of the Wisconsin Equity and Inclusion Laboratory. Thanks, guys. So fast. You guys are right up front. It's fantastic. So maybe we could begin with you, Shabaka. I'm just kind of curious. Maybe you could introduce yourself and your role here on campus to kind of tell us a little more about your interest in, the innovations and or entrepreneurial action, I guess, in your kind of sphere with the new CDL.
Well, thanks. So my name is Shabaka Gibson, and I'm with the Creative Destruction Lab. And I know what you're saying, creative destruction. What exactly does that mean? So what we do is we are a entrepreneurial accelerator, for lack of a better term. But basically, we take companies that are at seed stage, maybe a little bit beyond seed stage, and we help them accelerate massively. And the thesis behind this is simple. There's not a lack of good ideas out there in the world. There's not a lack of effort. And oddly enough, there's not a lack of money either. But when you look at where massive growth takes place, it tends to be on the coast, East Coast, West Coast, Silicon Valley, that type of stuff. And the question is why? What we understand is that there is a lack of judgment in the market in most places. So let me give you an example of what I mean. If you go out to Silicon Valley, you've got a great idea, you can probably go into any company or any networking event and find someone who can help you scale that company up. They've got advice, they've done it before, and they're willing to share how they did it. Well, you can't find that everywhere. So what we try to do is recreate that market for judgment for companies around the world. And we've been pretty successful. We've got 10 sites around the world, and Wisconsin is one of 3 sites in the United States. The others are mostly in Canada and in Europe, and it's been pretty successful. We've got a lot of Wisconsin companies, and we think that we can help to grow the economy here in Wisconsin and add value to our economy nationwide by helping to grow these companies.
That's fantastic. So here we have an instance where organizations are seeking the assistance of the campus to help develop and de-risk these ideas at their very early stages, essentially. And this is an interesting contrast, actually, in part, Gerlando, to your work. I'd like to hear a little more about your kind of interest in sort of social issues and maybe entrepreneurial action in those settings. Because if we think about the Wisconsin Equity and Inclusion Laboratory, that's an instance where we're developing things here and then in part translating them for others. So maybe you could tell us a little more about your work.
Sure. Now I'll say a little bit about what motivated the development of Wisconsin Equity and Inclusion Laboratory. Post tenure, I found myself one day just pondering the fact that most of my day and work life was dedicated and revolved around preparing and presenting research to a room of about 40, maybe 50 people at best of my peers. And it occurred to me really at that time that, there's probably a better way of doing this. And so fundamentally, the We Lab is designed in such a way that we take the basic research and that we typically do in research units, push those out still in the traditional formats, being research journals, publications, and things of that nature, but that we create unique pathways to partner with under-resourced communities to make that information available to them. I mean, those partnerships, manifest in relationships in such a way that we work in a very collaborative way, develop new initiatives, and engage intimately as it relates to understanding the types of challenges that lays out as a grandmother is trying to be useful in understanding what kindergarten readiness means, right? We've got a lot of research on that, but if you don't read research or attend any of these types of functions, that basic information doesn't readily manifest itself. And so we found ourselves in a pretty unique space to develop those partnerships. And they look like public forums. It looks like specialized publications, and it looks certainly like targeted social media posts and portals as well,
Yeah.
just to create that type of opportunity.
Yeah. No, that's great. So this is an instance where our traditional research enterprise is being, translated and put into practice. And that research pathway is so important, and for your vital work especially. Now, Shivagi, the Creative Destruction Lab also has a curricular tie-in. And I wonder if you could tell us a little bit about what that class is, so that if students were interested in learning more about the kind of procedures and the work that you were doing with CDL, what that maybe entail, or what would be involved?
Yeah, so we actually have a course called the Creative Destruction Lab here at the University of Wisconsin. And this is a year-long course. In this course, we take students from multiple disciplines. So you don't have to be business or one of the technical disciplines. We take students, they get into the course, and they help out with our programming a little bit. They get to sit in on some of the meetings that we have. And if you remember, I said we're creating a market for judgment. If you're a student and you're interested in going into business, or you've got a great idea, maybe you are a non-traditional business-minded person, but you want to go into a business or create a nonprofit, you get to sit in on these courses and on these programming, and you actually get to participate in that market for judgment. That's pretty big. It's 3 semesters long. Correction. You guys had 2 semesters here, right?
Two. Yeah,
I'm
we're
sorry.
not a try.
I went to Chicago.
Unless you have
we had
more
3.
power than we realize. I think we're
Yeah.
going to stick to 2.
Sorry, I went to Chicago. We had 3.
Oh, yeah.
But the students get to participate in that. And while they're participating in that, they are doing coursework in innovation and entrepreneurship. They are also helping out with the companies. They also get to work with the companies over the course of the year. So at the end of the year, maybe they do an internship with one of the companies that are participating in the program. Sometimes there are, job offers at the end of this, but the real value to the student is that they get to see this market for judgment. They get to participate in it, and they get to take it with them when they move on after graduation into whatever position that they decide to do. And if they decide to become an entrepreneur, now they've got a competitive advantage against other folks as well.
No, that's really great. So yeah, you're speaking to the confidence and skill building in the classroom, the confidence to kind of work with these professionals in these tense situations, and eventually the connections that can help them maybe develop their careers, which is great. Now, just curious, Jolanda, what role do the students have in some of the work that you're doing? I know some might be involved in developing and working with some of that research, but how do they touch upon that work and bringing it out?
So students within the We Lab, we have students that are undergraduates, we have master students and PhD, mostly PhD students, and students are engaged from the ideation stage of ideas, potential new grants, all the way through the implementation on both the research and the external partnership side. And what students develop pretty quickly in this process is a great appreciation for entrepreneurial spirit. The We Lab and many of the centers on campus live in an externally funded world. And so we have to think carefully about how these ideas get funded. And so there's this ideation piece, but then if there isn't a sort of a grant competition in place, then there are various opportunities to think about revenue generation, whether that's fee for service or a host of other ways in which to fund those efforts. Concurrently, because of the groups that we tend to serve from a knowledge base, they become very dependent on the information that we share and the relationships that we develop. Continuity is important, and it does cause us to think carefully at points in time as the need to shift who pays within that model, because once funders are done, you have to shift who's paying to another entity, and the last entity you want to shift it to the beneficiaries. And so it does create a very entrepreneurial mindset by being engaged and thinking from the beginning to implementation.
No, it's fantastic. Entrepreneurship, this ability to develop and sustain something in the soft money world where there is this break between the people that we serve and their ability maybe to pay for it is so important. And for those of you listening, you might have noticed there's some important parallels here. I mean, in one case, we might think of like, idea to IPO is this idealized process, and and on the other side, we also have idea to influence, really, that's, informed and by the work here at the campus. So that's fantastic. Thank you guys for sharing a little more about your programs here. And yeah, I'd like to invite our last panelists up here as we move along in our brisk pace. If I could please have Michelle Kwasny, Director of the Masters of Design and Innovation degree program, and Matt Messenger, the founding Executive Director of the Wisconsin Center for Education, Products and Services, join us. That would be fantastic. I love these forums. I get to see all my friends, which is just great. It's a special privilege here. But maybe we could begin with you, Michelle, here. And I'd like to sort of have you talk a little bit about your background. It's really interesting because I know you're deeply committed to and interested in social innovation and change. And so, yeah, share a little bit about how it is that you came here and the inspiration behind the new program.
Sure. Thank you, John, and welcome everybody. Thanks for having me. My name is Michelle Kwasny. I am the founding academic director for, I shouldn't say new anymore. It's been around 2 years, a Master's of Science in Design plus Innovation on campus. Let's see, the program is a 12-month intensive, hands-on this year, in person this year, master's program that is a special collaboration on our campus between and among 5 of our schools and colleges. So that's what makes that unique. Let's see, the collaboration includes our School of Business, our College of Engineering, our School of Human Ecology, where I call home, our user experience group within the new, CDIS, Center for Information Data and Data Sciences, and I missed one in there, but our information school, sorry guys, and our art department within our College of School of Education. So unique partnership, and that means a diversity of student comes through the program. We have 15 students and not one of them shares an undergraduate major this year. So we have humanities, political science, engineering, art, and so on and so on. And we really pride ourselves in that and actually shoot for that kind of diversity. Let's see, I also teach a course in the program, and those are hands-on projects with either industry partners or nonprofits or collaborations on campus. So a lot of what I teach is a very holistic, you've heard these themes already today, but really holistic look at a problem. And I do that from the design point of view. So innovation and entrepreneurship, yes, but also let's lead with doing something, designing something, putting something out there, trying something, prototyping something. So, yeah,
That's
I'll stop
great.
there.
Yeah, I like the bias to action.
Yes,
I'm very
exactly.
sympathetic to that. Now, Matt, maybe you could tell us a little bit about how it is that, well, your role, with YSIPS and thinking about that bias to action. I mean, you're working with people who are really trying to move things into the marketplace. Maybe you could tell us a little more about that too.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, John. Thanks for having me. And hi, everyone. I'm Matt Messenger. I'm the Executive Director of the Wisconsin Center for Education, Products and Services. We are a separate nonprofit affiliated with the UW, and our role is, in short, to commercialize the amazing educational innovations that are created at the UW that are copyrightable. And so we fund ourselves by selling stuff to schools directly. We have about 6,000 or 7,000 customers, both in the US and about 100 countries around the world. And we're a sales and marketing shop, essentially. And we take things that are created and shine them up, so to speak. A lot of things are created for grant purposes and maybe aren't ready for commercialization. For example, maybe they're online products that don't have the security features that are needed. We help shine them up a little bit, get them ready for commercial processes, and then we go out and sell. So that's what we do at YSIPS.
That's great. And your role on campus, it's a little more expansive in some sense, because I know you've been deeply involved and supported some of our entrepreneurship or innovation competitions, mentoring students, or even participating as a judge in some cases. And I'm wondering if you've noticed anything in the years gosh, probably about 10 years now or so that you've been kind of involved with this. What's sort of, is there more interest now than before, or is what people are kind of looking to work on or do differently? Do you see entrepreneurial energy kind of shifting in any important ways with the outreach you do across the campus? I'd be curious if
That's a good question. Yeah, we've definitely seen a shift. I think like a lot of us would probably recognize there's been a huge influx of interest in entrepreneurship, especially social entrepreneurship, not only doing well, but doing good. And that's kind of what we focus on at YSEPS too. Part of our theory of change is if we can sell to a school and a school can find the resources to generate a PO and get the organizational buy-in to get a purchase order to us, then they're more likely to implement whatever intervention we're selling. So it's a part of our theory of change is that getting some revenue in the door can lead to better implementation of whatever educational intervention we're selling. That's a big piece of what we're after too.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And Michelle, in your space, there's some analogs there too, because I know you have some resources that you, considerable resources that you bring to support the students in your program. Certainly the UW Makerspace is probably a helpful one of those. Maybe you could tell us a little more about some of the supports or scaffolding you provide students in the program and what role those might play in helping students as they develop their ideas.
Yeah, great question. So yes, of course, the UW Makerspace is a great asset. Our program anchor, our space anchor is our makerspace. So all of our students have studio space to leave their stuff. That's incredible on this campus space. But all of the amazing tools in the UW Makerspace, my colleague Lennon Rogers and his team have built out and students in our program use all the time. And I want to draw attention to all of the makerspaces across our campus too, right? So we are 5 schools and colleges. There is an amazing one in our art department. There's an amazing couple at Sohi and so on and so on. And so our students have access to, really because of this collaboration, the competitions that the business school puts on and the makerspaces in all of these different places, the faculty resources and support in all of those schools and colleges as well. So we really are a bridge and are a way for students to come in from anywhere and kind of build the skills, the overall design thinking skills, but also the skills that they want to tailor their own pathway through. And so just a couple of extremes here, and they're really generalizations, but I think they help elicit this or tell this story. There might be an artist out there who really wanted to be a studio artist, sell their work, and is just not getting the traction they need, but have all these amazing skills, or a musician, have all these amazing skills of building and making and sharing and putting their things out there, but can't actually sell those into the world to get paid for them in the industry world. So we can help shift that trajectory for them. And the opposite is true as well. There might be, I use this example a lot, mechanical engineering, very specific direction on our campus. And really the student graduates and doesn't see themselves as that mechanical engineer in that company, wants to think much bigger and be much more innovative. So they're coming at it from a different perspective. And it really is the diversity of all those people and all the schools and all the support that make it special. So we really are trying to kind of tailor the resources and the support for where the student wants to go to. So hopefully that helps.
Oh, that's great. You guys are doing such vital work on campus, and I really appreciate all of you taking time to kind of share more about what it is that you're doing, but also surfacing some of these maybe more hidden pathways for students, whether it's in the classroom, in the lab, or out in our community. And I'd ask everybody just to join me in a round of applause to thank all of our panelists before we move into Q&A. It's really great to have all of you collected together and in person at the forum. So we're going to transition here to Q&A. So I'd ask our speakers to maybe happily scooch. Be careful, the wheels, it's a really frictionless surface nearly. So, behave yourselves, but you can scooch, maybe turn to face the audience. And as Laura had mentioned at the beginning, we're going to ask for questions from our audience here tonight. But those of you who are here, if you have a question, just signal, let us know, and use the microphone, I think at the back of the room there, just so we can capture your questions for our online audience. And then we'll turn to the chat for the session today too, and see if we can bring some of those questions forward as well. But why don't we start with our in-house audience, since everybody's right here. Are there any questions that people might want to ask and they're willing to risk a walk to the microphone in the back? or if you're shy, we could try online too. I'm curious because I can't see the chat. If oh, all right. Wow, this is well, I have so I have many questions, I suppose, but and one of them, this one's maybe a little awkward, and I hate to be just booming out like a voice behind you here, but as we strive to pull this great collection of people together from very different parts of campus tonight, I'd be curious to ask our panelists, like, who else should we be inviting to the continuing conversations that we have as we try to surface entrepreneurial opportunities for our students, try to legitimize some of the work that our colleagues on the faculty or in the staff might pursue? Are there any people that you feel like we should really, be watching, or divisions or departments whose work we should be especially, sensitive to and think about for our next conversations? Yeah, Sarah.
I'll start.
Yeah.
One of the most entrepreneurial units on campus is the First Wave program, which is an OMI. The students who are in that program are producing from their very first semester. Many of them are also residents in the studio startup learning community. And they are music producers, event producers, fashion designers, all kinds of artistic practices. And they're doing that all 4 years that they're in the program. So I think that they're one of the most entrepreneurial units on campus, and it would be great for them to be part of this conversation.
Yeah, no, it's an excellent point. Yeah, just look, I see the backs of your heads, but yes, Mary Beth, maybe
Well, this is kind of a cheat, but I just would say that in general, I think end users / community members should just always have a seat in all of these discussions, because we're just this like one moment in time for people we're setting out into the world, or we're still looking at things as community engaged as we might be, and our center really strives to be that, but we're still separate. And so to the extent we can include folks that are either out there doing the work, have faced the challenges, or are the ones who we are theoretically going to impose these innovations on. I just want to like make that plug that from our center continues to be like a very big part of what we try to strive to be about.
Yeah, no, that's a fantastic point. And so much of the work that many of you do deeply involves the community. Like, they're informing the work that's happening, and it wouldn't be successful in practice without their participation. So great. And yeah, I'm sorry, we have a question in the back. Thanks.
Hi there. Okay, yeah, I'm a little short, so I'm gonna sort of. Hi. Okay, great. So my name is Alyssa, and I'm a postdoc here at Morgridge, but also at the Department for Bacteriology. And I really like entrepreneurship. I've been getting into it in the last couple of years, especially during the pandemic, when I was like, oh my gosh, the world needs solutions. So I just wanted to know if you all had any general advice for people like myself who want to pursue many startups. So not just one startup, but I would really love to pursue several startups, but I don't have a lot of, like, I don't have any experience, totally new to it. I don't even know what that looks like. So I don't know if you all had advice or any words on that. Thank you.
Great question.
Well, congratulations. You picked one of the hardest things you could possibly find to study. I'll say this, there is a lot of opportunities for creating new companies and startups. If you want to create multiple startups, you could do that, but it would be best to concentrate on one, get it going. I've met a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of founders who are similar to you. They like to start a company, they grow it to a certain point, and then they sell that company because they love the process of starting and growing companies. But they focus on one, they get it up and going, and then they either license out the technology, or they sell the company and then they start another one. So just do it in a series.
I'd like to echo that just with a quick story about if you've not seen outlier.org. Outlier is the new college credit course online, 3 credits, about $400 a course, very beautifully disruptive. And I got a call from Google Ventures, John Wyman, I believe, back in April. And he said, I'm not really familiar with education, but I know you are, and you're working at UW-Madison, and what do you think? And I said, well, if you're not familiar with the space, you don't know the domain, why are you willing to put a bet on it? And he said, well, because Aaron Rasmussen, the founder of Masterclass, is a proven entity. He knows what he's doing. He said, it's not so much the model and the domain, it's the person, the fact that they walk the path and have the savvy. And he said, that's my smart bet. So just to echo.
Yeah, no, that's great. And I'll add, among the many roles and responsibilities I have on campus, one of them is helping to support our Mortgage Entrepreneurial Bootcamp, which is actually designed for PhD and postdoc students in the life sciences and engineering disciplines. And so for what might be roughly a 1-week commitment, you could actually learn more about some of the entrepreneurship, what's involved in entrepreneurial practice, what it takes to cultivate an entrepreneurial mindset. Completely free, again, thanks to the vision and generosity of the mortgages, but that might be something else to kind of invest in, just so you're informed in developing your capability, your knowledge, to their comments right here. So that's great. Good luck with the ventures. I'm all for it. Excellent. Actually, this brings up maybe another question, and each of you could maybe respond to this. When might a student say, like Alyssa, sort of reach out to you? Like, when would it be right for them, given all the different things that you do and the stages of, the development of ideas or interest in kind of making things happen in the world? When would be the right time for them to kind of find you or seek out your opportunities? I don't know, maybe we could start on I don't know, Shabaka, would you be willing to start on your end and we'll work back down this way?
We are a little unique. So at the Creative Destruction Lab, in the actual course, it's a 4-year-long course. So you have to start at the very beginning of the semester and actually take that course. But if you are a postdoc, for example, the companies that we typically work with they're beyond incubation stage, and they're beyond they're in the acceleration stage, that seed stage, not the bootstrapping stage. So we try to get them a little bit further along to where they've got an MVP, market viable product, using jargon here. And we take them at that point because we're trying to make them massive. So we usually get them a little bit further along. But if they're a student at the beginning of the school year, that's when we really want those students to take that course, because that's when they really get the real value out of it as a student.
Yeah, that's great. And yeah, Matt, for you, I guess when would be the right maybe on-ramp? Like, when should they maybe find you and think about your services?
Yeah, in terms of YSEBs, anyone at any time who has an idea around education, with education defined broadly, come talk to us. We'd love to brainstorm, help you with different ideas, think about ways to approach different challenges that you're looking at. So anytime, we'd love to interact with more students, because to date we've been working primarily with faculty and staff.
Yeah, great.
So the nature of a master's program means post undergrad, right? So anytime you're thinking about, should I go off and study something? Is this the right program for me? Great. I'll also just say many of the students in the program, and the ones we really find fit this sort of design thinking program, are people who never really fit in one discipline or another. They're sort of like engineers with an art minor, or community studies with a music background, or sort of like these hybrid, really amazing unicorn students. So if you're one of those students and you're thinking design, engineering, art, I don't know, come talk to me, because you're fascinating and I'd love to help you find your path, whether it's here or elsewhere.
Fantastic.
It sounds like you have some of the same unicorns we have in the Bolt Center. So we have lots of ways to connect. Although we're a graduate program, a 1-year accelerated master's, 2 of our courses, the Intro to Entrepreneurship, which is MHR 632, and then our MHR 636, which John teaches about entrepreneurial organizations. Those are open to undergraduate students. They're 3 credits apiece. We also, in collaboration with our colleague Angela Richardson, are coaches and mentors on the arts business competition, and work with students from across campus on that. And you can just find us at boltcenter.org and reach out if you're interested in learning more about opportunities for undergraduates and graduates.
That's great.
Yeah, so in terms of one of the nice things about our Center for Community and Nonprofit Studies is that we have like open, publicly available activities and outreach activities like community sessions, virtually and in person. And we have a big keynote event, which will be on April 28th this year. And you can just get on our email list and get information from us in those ways. And when things are really open, that can include some wonderful networking with community partners as well, which I think is really valuable for just about anybody. But we also have a host of undergraduate and graduate level courses that can be taken a la carte. So if you're just like curious, you can look, especially for our inner HE 815 courses, which are
Mhm.
open to upper level undergrads
Mhm.
and graduate students. I teach them for the most part, and I let in almost anybody because I think there's such great, well, the more multidisciplinary the learning community, the better.
There is strength in that for sure.
And then we also, through our center, one thing I wanted to mention is we do have an arm that does technical support, whereby we do fee for service contracts with community organizations and deploy custom teams of staff and students to do things like research and evaluation, data analysis, focus groups, strategic planning. And we actually are in a position right now where while we need to prioritize our students from our own programs, usually we have a pretty substantial amount of projects right now. And we also have a need for more students. And so those are living wage paid positions. So if you're
Wow.
interested in something like that and learning on the job, those are something that you might consider. And then
Wow.
finally, I would just say the why of why you might kind of interface with us could be if you think you want to pursue something entrepreneurial or innovative. I think that whole thing I was discussing before about sort of having humility about like the bigger context and making sure you know what's already out there and some of the like systemic things that might be at play or the community considerations you might want to learn about before you go stake out in that way.
Yeah.
We could be a good place to explore some of those ideas. And we're also, I think, pretty good at distilling things like, why would you form a nonprofit versus have a low profit LLC? Or why
Yeah.
might you want to just do a collaboration with another entity instead of forming something on your own? So
Great.
Great points across the board.
Yeah.
So in answer to the question when, I would say yes. And thank you for the emails that I received from a number of you. So please, I love to host at Mickey's. I'm Norm when I walk into Mickey's. Iced
Nice.
tea, coffee cake, yes, we know. So I'll buy, and I have no vested interest except it's such a joy to watch the innovative spirit. I loved your phrase about, I think we're all wired entrepreneurially, especially around the social innovation,
Yeah.
social entrepreneurship. Like I want to do something about that.
Yeah.
Maybe it's not for you to step out in a solo act, but in the spirit of discovery, you're showing up here. You're availing yourself of the resources that have been presented to you, taking me up on my offer to host you at Mickey's whenever, anytime. I'm happy to do that. It's just a joy to say, what are you interested in? You know, what do you want to do? What matters to you? And if that leads you on the entrepreneurial path, awesome.
Great.
If it doesn't, and you need more exposure to other resources, to me, the mantra around, you know, if there's a meta mantra for entrepreneurism, it's people inspire people.
Yeah.
And there are
Sure.
amazing examples of the social entrepreneurs, social innovators, Solutions Journalism Network, which is a really cool partnership with the New York Times, funded by the Gates Foundation. Andy's work and his team here at Discovery to Product, they've got social innovation pathways for you to discover.
Yeah.
But don't be afraid. It may be that you say, oh, now that I know that exists and somebody's working in that space, I want to throw in on that. Awesome.
Sure.
Give me the pleasure of
great.
introducing you. So
great.
jeff.snell@whisk.edu. See you at
Excellent.
Mickey's.
Yeah. And
I'll try to be brief. I hear the noises in the background here. You know, we have opportunities that begin as early as a freshman, and because we have for our student opportunities, there are many that aren't necessarily focused on research. So if you come with a communication set of skills with social media design, video, photography, we have projects that can certainly utilize those. And so, you know, now is a good time. Anytime is good. And
I'm
again,
hearing yes.
yeah, so we have paid and unpaid opportunities, and we look forward to getting students engaged because it does make the place very lively.
That's great. So as we just approach 5 o'clock here, maybe one last question. I see we have one here in the back of the room, and then we'll transition to our resource fair. But yeah, please, what's your name and what's your question for our panel?
Thank you. My name is Guilherme Rosa. I'm a faculty member in the Department of Animal and Dairy Science, so work in agriculture. So I don't have a question, it's a comment and maybe suggestion. So we start working with D2P and WARF and LNE Clinic, trying to build a a company around some inventions and to commercialize this in the ag tech space.
Yeah.
So it's amazing the resources that we have on campus and in Madison and in Wisconsin. And so it's been extremely helpful. But for example, today I just learned about other resources and organizations that I didn't know.
Yeah.
And so my question or comment is, so we have these resources, and it's interesting the way we find, like we start with D2P, and then you meet someone, you have a mentor, and the mentor guide you to another person or entity.
Yeah.
And so my question is, if there would be a way to have all these resources organized in a more systematic way that we could find them
Yeah.
easier, or depending on the stage where you are
Oh.
in the company and your
You know.
career, and because you have the resources, but it's kind of you
Yeah.
open a door and then you see other three doors, and then you keep going, or maybe this is not the direction that you need to go. And
Oh, that's such a great observation, and actually a wonderful end note for us today, because I guess I would say a couple of things to that. Many of us serve informally as your guides, right? All of us are well aware of what some of these resources may be, and do our best to kind of shepherd people to the right person at the right time, depending on what they're working on. But more systematically, and with the investment and support of Discovery to Product in particular, there's a new resource, the Start-In Guide for the campus, that will have to, it actually surfaces these very resources for people depending upon the stage of development of their idea, the kinds of skills that they're seeking to acquire, and so on. And I know Andy Richards and some of his crew are here today. So as we kind of transition to the resource fair, I'm sure he'd be glad to tell you a little more about this new navigation tool. But to your point, and I think we've learned today at the panel, you know, UW-Madison has this amazing array of resources and really interesting initiatives doing important work, you know, here in the community and even nationally. And whether you're a student or a faculty or staff member with an idea for a new product or ideas for new policies, there's likely some place where we can help support your work. And so, you know, on that note, I guess I'd invite all of you to join us at the resource fair, learn more about even more programs. And yeah, thank our panelists again for taking time tonight to share more about their work and their efforts.